So I found this fantastic cafe. I've taken one of these her coffee cup from the cafe, and I'm sure she thought I was a crook. But anyway, I managed to convince her I will bring it back.
And that is kind of an epic segue in terms of introducing you this morning. Mike Daish, kind of entrepreneur and businessman, and kind of, as you said, up in Pahia at 5:30 this morning, and zooming in to speak to a range of student leaders with us this morning. Like I said, interesting times with people all over the place, people unwell, but just the fact that you're able to kind of zoom in to us in a car with your cup of coffee and speak to the students at Wakatipu High School is kind of entrepreneurial at its finest. So big warm welcome for Mike Daish.
Hey, thank you all. I've been really looking forward to catching up with everyone. And I think, you know, as the intro said, you know, this is very reflective of what the world we live in. You know, we've had to be adaptable and all of these words, resilient and so forth. But generally, I've found in my career, where there's a will, there's a way. And I certainly had the will and the way, and you're about to get a storm here. So, you know, it's under all these environmental challenges that we go through. So what I thought with the short amount of time we've got, I think it's a good amount of time. What I was going to do was just take you through one of my parts of my career and my life, which was with Dyson, and then I'll stop, and I'm certainly open to questions, and they can be as confrontational as you like, inquisitive. You know, by all means, you know, I'm very much about opening the floor to conversation, which is probably one of my pillars that I feel is super important, to have a conversation and be collaborative. So by all means, after that, this initial piece, please make sure that you yell out and ask me some questions. There's nothing worse than after a presentation and there's silence, where people don't feel, well, they have questions, but they don't feel that they want to ask them or can ask them. So super important that you do. So what I thought I'd talk, is that okay with everyone? Yep. So what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about Dyson, which was a big piece of my career, which was 15 years of my life. And you know, you only have a certain number of heartbeats in your life, and you want to make sure that those heartbeats are beating away when you're doing something that you enjoy. I didn't know at that starting point that I would enjoy Dyson. I didn't actually even know really what it was. You know, I sat in a hotel room with another guy who had a couple of vacuum cleaners. And he went forward to try and talk to me about innovation, technology, and design. And at that point, I'm constantly looking at these two vacuum cleaners that I was wondering pretty much what my life's got to, where I was in a hotel room with another guy and two vacuum cleaners. And so something had to happen at that point for me to get very excited about this. And what it was not the vacuum cleaners, because that wasn't a particular interest of mine, funny enough. But it was the technology that he was talking to me about. And something triggered for me that I saw something beyond what he was talking about, what he was telling me about. I saw something beyond that. And what it was that I felt that this technology truly was going to change the world forever in the way that people would use a vacuum cleaner. And I don't know why I felt that. And there was no teaching, but there were all these life experiences that I had, but I just felt that this was pretty unique. So apart that all of my friends, when I'm sitting around and having a beer and I started talking about vacuum cleaners and everyone left, it was really exciting for me. So what this was it was a chance for me to take something from almost nothing that no one knew about and grow this or help grow it into something pretty special. So what it was, and for those of you who don't actually know what it's all about, was that the idea was to take products that were working okay, but actually get them to a point where they worked properly. And this was around no loss of suction. So if you could imagine you're wanting to extract dirt and dust out of a carpet or a hard floor, you need to have a constant vacuum to suck it all out. And the technology that was around was over 100 and something years old, which was a bag that would suck up, it would get clogged, it would lose suction. But because there was noise and because you thought it was working, you felt comfortable with it. The real reason was there wasn't an alternative. So people just kept using it, even though it didn't work properly. So, it would be interesting for you to start to think about what are the other products or services that we've adapted to, but don't really work properly. Now, sometimes people don't know what working properly was. And this was actually the case with Dyson. So no one really could imagine what it would be like to use a product that didn't lose suction from start to finish. And so people put up with an inferior product for years and years, over 100 years. So what we did was we went around about talking about this technology, and what made the difference was quite interesting. So we went around and started to talk about no loss of suction, which we thought was the real benefit, but it actually was the feature, not the benefit. So we were really going down the track of saying, hey, look, Dyson products, they don't lose suction, and this was our unique benefit. But it wasn't, it was a feature. The benefit to the customer was you got a much cleaner house, or you extracted more dirt, or you had less allergens or allergies to, that impact on people's health and life. So that was the real benefit. And the benefit was that you save time, you save money, and you get a better result. So those were some of the things that we could see. So as you guys all go out into the real world, and high school, as much as it is the real world for you at the moment, it's not the real world. As you go out to the real world, make sure you take time to slow down a little, absorb things, and start to think about these differences and what the real purpose of what you're doing. So we took a couple of steps back and we said, so what's the problem here? People aren't buying our products. They aren't understanding our technology. As much as we spent money on marketing and all the smartness around digital back then, which was probably pretty basic to you guys at the moment. And so what we triggered on was that we said, no bag, no loss of suction. So the no bag was something that people really got their heads around and said, I would love to buy a vacuum cleaner that doesn't have a bag, and therefore that would save me money, it would save me time. The real effect was that it actually had a product that performed better, which was really quite the hidden reason. That so people brought it and suddenly went, this is working better, I really love the technology, I don't have to buy bags. And that's where we actually catapulted. The sales really grew from that point on. So I'll take a little moment there to answer any questions about it, because this was really at the start of the journey of working for a company that was truly changing the world forever. And you can see that now sort of 25 years down the track. Are there any questions at this stage from anyone? No? Silence? Okay.
We got one. Oh,
Oh, brilliant. Sorry.
I'm just a bit curious about the timeline. So like from this marketing, the shift in marketing that you did, how long was that after you were standing in a hotel room with two vacuum cleaners?
Great question. So probably it was around about 2 years. So what occurred was that we got ourselves, when I look back, and always look back, and that helps you generally for the future. So when I look back, I go, we got ourselves hung up on what we thought was important, but not what the consumer or the customer rated as important. So we were trying to tell people a message and get the messaging around our innovation and our technology that didn't lose suction. And actually that was the difference, but it didn't connect to the customer or the consumer. So if you can think of other products and services that talk about something but doesn't really connect with you, then that's probably where we were in that early day. And maybe one of them is, people talk about high-speed internet. But until you actually experience high-speed internet, it really is just words. And it's, you think high-speed, oh, does that mean? But once you experience it, then it was something really, really important. So that was probably about 2 years, and we changed our direction. But we didn't really change the direction. What we did was we added in what we thought was a perceived benefit into the technology. So we managed to bundle those two messaging together. So it was Dyson, no bag, no loss of suction. And I'll talk a little bit about why we kept no loss of suction there later on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, cool. So we changed this messaging, and then we went around trying to demonstrate this technology to be truly different than everything else. And one of the ways that we did this was, and this was a really good moment for me, was we did market research around our bin, which is where all the dirt and dust goes. And all the market research came back and said that it should be black or dark. No one wants to see the dirt and dust. Hide it away. And this is the brilliance of James Dyson. So James and myself, a couple of others were sitting in the room, and he said, absolutely no way are we going to have it hidden or dark. We want a clear bin. People want to see what's happening in our innovation and our technology, and people want to be rewarded by seeing dirt and dust coming out of their homes. So market research said, don't do this. James, which was James Dyson, truly innovative at this point, really honed in and challenged what was back then, to be fundamentals. Do your market research, and then that we didn't do. So we had a clear bin, and that probably accelerated us faster than we ever thought, because when people used our products, they could see them working and working properly because the dirt and dust was coming out of your homes. It allowed us to demonstrate how much better our products were. So we went around and had a challenge where you'd use any other vacuum cleaner, then use a Dyson, and you still watch the bin fill up with dirt and dust. So that proved that their technology didn't work as well as our technology, and it was a simple demonstration to allow people to have proof that what they were going to buy actually did work better or work properly. So that was a really powerful moment where we went to a clear bin, and then they allowed us to accelerate away. So in Australia, where I'll give you that as an example, is in the marketplace, it's generally accepted that if you are a higher price product, you will probably not get to a number one position by units, because naturally, if it's more expensive, not, you know, your market size isn't as big where you can play. So when we started to put some, I guess, placeholders of what we thought success could look like, and goals that we would aim at, we felt that to get to number one by value in the marketplace would be achievable. We also set another benchmark that wouldn't it be amazing to get number one by volume. So the you know, I guess the challenge was set, and the goal and the aspiration was set. And I think what I learned from some of those things was that it's really good to set yourself an individual goals and perhaps visualize what that may look like, even though when you set those goals and you visualize what it's like, at that point, it may seem unachievable or even a dream. So you could imagine here we were with a product that was $700 in the marketplace. The average price was $300 in the marketplace. So we were 2 and a bit times the average price. So how on earth would we ever get to number one by units? So that was an interesting goal setting exercise. So something that, you know, individually I think is quite helpful, for you to, and it's your own personal goals that you're setting. Put some markers in your, you know, in your future that you'd like to see and achieve, and just have them there. And it's a really interesting thing personally to do, but also within a work environment. So what we did was we said this is what it would look like. And so we visualized and we said, if we were number one by units, this is our market size. This is how much we would turn over. This is the organizational structure that we would need to achieve that, e.g. the org structure and the people. And so we headed off. The next thing that we found with the technology, so you could imagine we've now got, okay, we've got the right marketing message, we're connecting well with the end consumer, and we're now dealing with retailers. So we've got this product, we've removed the bag, it works properly, and we're now talking to retailers about getting our products on display, then buying the products so that they can sell them to their customers, which effectively we felt were our customers as much as theirs anyway. So when we went in, I got a big barrier. There was a huge wall as we went in to try to sell them into the retailers. And funny enough, it wasn't price. It wasn't that the unique technology was amazing. It wasn't our packaging. It wasn't any of those things, or even our brand wasn't known. What it was a strange thing where, because we were removing the bag, it meant that the retailers weren't going to sell bags. And they actually made more money selling bags than they did actually selling vacuum cleaners. So they saw us, funny enough, as a real threat to their traditional business. Now, it's really short-sighted, right? Because, you know, bags aren't good for the environment. You know, the carbon footprint of making, delivering, getting rid of bags is huge. All of these things that you all actually are really connected with around the environment and carbon footprint and so forth. Back then, that wasn't really talked about as much as it is today. But what it was we were taking away a revenue stream, a profit stream from them. And they felt that we were a threat as much as an opportunity to their business. And at that moment, as I'm sitting there, I realized that actually our pathway, our innovation to the market would need to change sooner than later. The traditional way of getting to consumers would have to change. And it was that moment that it triggered. it didn't change the way that we approached to sell to retail, because we still did. But I did realize that actually retailers were around actually making money rather than a way to deliver the best product to the consumer. And so it was interesting. If you go back 25 years, that was the point where direct to consumer had actually started within Dyson, but we just didn't know it then. And so the other little nugget that I've got is small things, small interactions, small conversations can often lead to really, really big changes. So I'll stop there again. Is there any questions around that moment that I thought was quite pivotal? And I'll have a quick sip of my coffee.
I just had a question before you mentioned goals. Could you highlight what you think the importance of setting goals is?
Yeah, I think the importance to me, and sort of one of my fundamentals is that I talk about things that I feel everyone is different, so everyone has a different viewpoint and have a different way of operating. But for me, by setting goals, first of all, gives you something to aim at, and it gives you a sense of reward when you get there. The problem is my goals that I set, as fast as I achieve some of them, and not all of them, by the way, but some of them, I actually reset more goals and just keep moving forward. I just think what it does is it gives you clarity of purpose. So, the reason for me doing this is I'm on the way to doing that. So it gives you that purpose and that clarity around that. Just remember, try not to set goals in concrete, because it's your own goals, and the magic about that is you can change your goals. But generally, I would set a goal and I'd think, what would this be like personally? I might set a business goal. So, with Dyson, one of the goals was to be number one by units, not just value. And that drove behavior. As much as real life is subliminal, because it just sits there in your head, and the actions that you take, sometimes you don't know why you're doing them, and it's that subliminal goal that you've set within yourself. The other thing is that when you state a goal, e.g., we wrote down within our strategy document that we wanted to be number one by units, not just value. In a way, you're committed to that by putting something in writing and stating it. So that's quite a big thing, right? First, thinking about it. And you could write your own personal goals for yourself, and that's fine. Or you can state business goals and all of these sorts of things. But it just gives you a purpose and a direction. That's what I feel.
Mike, I've got a related question here. You talked to Hamish Bond also talked about setting goals, and even at a young age when he was here a couple of weeks ago, and having a kind of general goal. One of the things that you said is set some goals that might even be unachievable, or like a dream. And maybe you were going to talk about this later, but how do you respond when you set a goal or have this kind of benchmark that you want to achieve? And have you ever had any moments where you haven't achieved those goals? And how did you kind of respond in those spaces and places?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are. There's lots of these sort of goals that you set, but I don't feel that you haven't achieved them yet. Not that you haven't achieved them. And so that's my get out of jail. So goals give you direction, and they give you, the purpose. So one of the goals when we're in America, for instance, America's, say, 320 million people versus 5 million in New Zealand. And back then, I think New Zealand had 4 million. So one of the strange goals I had was to get a Dyson product into every household in America. So that was a goal that I set because it was almost unattainable. And by setting that unattainable goal, that I, and probably in myself, I thought that was impossible, but it was a goal to set to give you some direction. Funny enough, that goal may actually occur. And the reason that it may occur is that I limited myself to thinking Dyson at that stage was vacuum cleaners, but actually Dyson then started producing more products. So they produced, air, environmental products. So they would heat air and they would cool air. And then they would, purify air, and they'd humidify air and all of these things. So suddenly what happened was, because of the portfolio of the product, what seemed an unattainable goal became very attainable. And not only did I change that goal because I could see it actually it could become real, we actually changed it and added to it and said a Dyson product in every home in America and in every office in America. And that was because we started to diversify a bit. So yes, you can have goals that you think you haven't met, and they're called short-term goals or medium-term goals, and they are all very normally measurable, and you've set those for a reason. Generally, I think goals should be much more long-term, so they create a behaviour change. So you'll have a short-term goal. So in my current business that I'm in, one of the short-term goals is to, achieve $200 million within the next 6 months. That's a short-term goal. It's a financial goal, but it's how you get there. It's not the actual goal. That is the benefit to setting those goals. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
So you imagine that we've got this technology. We've changed our marketing to be more focused on the customer benefit. We've realized that our pathway to the market, we've got challenges because we've got something so different, so new, and we are challenging the status quo. We're challenging pathways. So, the next thing that we realized is that the service model on when things don't go well or people want information, the service model of a vacuum cleaner was broken. So the way that people used to have a product, it stopped working and you threw it away, or it stopped working and they would send you to a service agent who wasn't particularly helpful, and often just tried to sell you a new product. So what we wanted to do is have our products that weren't thrown away. We wanted to make sure people talked more about how good our products were. But the biggest reason that we changed the service model, and I'll explain how we changed that in a minute, was that it gave us direct access to what our products were and how they were performing and what parts of the product broke or didn't perform well. And it gave us visibility into real life and real world usage of a product. So I'm going to take you down 2 or 3 little roads here. One was, we found that part of our cable rewind, that's the power cord that goes in and out of a vacuum cleaner, and we would test robotically. So we would test 5,000 times for the cable rewind to go in and out. And we thought that was the benchmark, because other people only tested at 1,000. So we thought we were really good. But we still had problems with the cable rewind. We still had failures of the cable rewind. And it was because robots don't function the same way people do. So people would pull the cable rewind out faster, slower. They'd tug it from the side. They'd tug it up. There was various different challenges. And so what we used robot testing was high repetitive testing, but we actually employed people to try and break and destroy our products, and we would learn from those times that would break or it would get destroyed or it would stop working. So that moment of getting the products into our home, into our service network from the home directly, allowed us to have a much better research development area of what really was happening in people's homes that allowed us to make products much better. So instead of thinking after sales service or service was something we weren't interested in and sort of tried to offload to someone else, we realized that this was one of our strategically important areas and one of our strengths. So what we did was we sent a courier to someone's home, picked up their vacuum cleaner, we brought it into our service centre, we fixed it, found out what went wrong, we valeted it and cleaned it up, put it in a new box and sent it back to the customer. And in Sydney, we could do that within 2 days. And that was our goal. So we would say, if you had a problem with a Dyson vacuum cleaner, we will get it fixed, valeted, and back to you within 2 days. So we set ourselves so, like this wasn't a small innovation. This wasn't a small step of customer satisfaction. This was massive, because it would normally take people 2 or 3 weeks, and you would have to go to the service centre and you'd have to go back again and pick it up. So it's a little bit like, if you had a car, we would say to you, we'll come to you, service your car and leave. You don't have any hassles. And that started to happen a bit. In Queenstown, if you've got a mountain bike, one of the retailers now comes to you, fixes your mountain bike, services your mountain bike at home from their little van, and off they go. The saving to you in time, effort, and all those things is just fantastic. So, at school there, all the bikes there in the bike shed, not so many now in winter, but, you could have them all serviced there instead of going to a shop to get it serviced. And that seems so archaic and not really customer focused. Now, by the way, people want you to come into the shop to get service so that you buy other stuff, but that's just a normal marketing and sales technique. So that was fundamentally different than anyone else was doing, and it set us apart. But from a customer, they thought that was fantastic. But the real reason that we did it is we wanted to find out how to improve our products and how to make our products better. Our competitors didn't see that, and our competitors kept going down the service model. And in fact, service agents would not service Dyson because we didn't give them the spare parts to fix our products, because we didn't want them to do it. We wanted to do it ourselves, and we wanted to learn more. So our DNA within the organisation, right through the organisation, operations, finance, marketing, sales, everyone had this insatiable appetite to learn more about our products and learn more about the customer usage. And that has continued on since Dyson started to today. It's an incredible culture that's within the Dyson model. And as people leave Dyson, that DNA starts to spread throughout other organisations. And some of my peers now are running, large organisations. One's running Volvo cars. And I was talking to him, and he was just said, the learnings through Dyson, how you can replicate them and build big businesses. So one's the CEO of Specialized Bikes, one's the CEO of White Bikes, one's the CEO of Volvo Cars, one runs, BMW. These are large organizations, and this DNA has set ourselves around it. And the hidden thing around this was that leadership within category, within customer is super important. So think leader, and think how to do things better. Products work properly, helps the organization, and it actually spans across whole lots of ranges. I'm just aware of time, so I'll stop there again. Any questions about that piece of the puzzle? Because it was a really important one for us. Are there any there? Nope. Okay. So as you can hear, I don't know, can you guys hear this rain? Because it's absolutely pissing down here, like unbelievable. Okay. So the final point that I thought I'd talk about was around innovation. So what I'm going to talk about now is not really innovation around innovating the product, because I've sort of harped on that enough, I think. What I'm talking about is innovation around delivery to the consumer or the customer, the end user. And the innovation we had was from our factory and our design center direct to customer, and remove the obstacles in between. So what we set around doing was, how do we set up, obviously online sales are the obvious one, but the other thing that we've done around the world is set up our own stores. And these stores are where you can go in, feel, touch, experience the products, where you've got someone that you can talk to, where you've got someone who's got the product and we can use it and test it in on a variety of surfaces and so forth. But it went beyond that. So some of you might know that Dyson do vacuum cleaners. We do hair products, and we also do environmental control products. So when you go into our stores, we have a hair salon in there, and you can actually get your hair done and use the Dyson dryers to style your hair. Now, it doesn't work on me so well, but for opening up a marketplace and for experience, that is so different. And we started to only sell our products initially through hair salons, because those were experts. Those were people who knew the damage that could be done with current hair dryers and the way that they damage your hair. So that was super important. Then we had air control. So what we used to do was get people with backpacks in large cities and walk around for a day, their normal day, come back, and we would download the information on how much pollution they effectively breathe or put through their lungs in one day. And then that allowed us to talk more and experience and show people what actually purified and clean air in your homes would be like. Now, in New Zealand, we're lucky because unless you live in Arrowtown, you generally have good air quality. But in places like Beijing and San Francisco, air quality is not good at all. So these are areas that we grew and we focused on. And funny enough, they are probably launch pads for a whole lot of other products that I'm not aware of, but will be coming. The other innovation that we had was around our making sure all the part of the product was all Dyson. So we used to buy motors from other companies. We used to buy effectively power cables and things. So we went down the track of going, we want to innovate our own digital motors, and we made them. We want to innovate and have our own batteries so we can remove cables. And so all of those things, funny enough, have become bigger parts of our business than the actual end products. So, you know, Dyson's probably one of the biggest digital motor manufacturers in the world, and they only make it for their own products. So there's all of these unique things and angles on the company that evolved over time that actually all came back to the fundamental of we want products to work properly. And the investment around young engineers and brains and being able to fail and being able to think differently effectively allowed this runway for the future. There were lots of products that actually we wanted to do but failed. We made a washing machine that used half the amount of water of any other washing machine and cleaned clothes and 5 times faster than any other washing machine. But we couldn't actually get that to work. So it wasn't so useful. We came out with it was an interesting thing. It was a coffee machine, but instead of pushing pressurized water through ground coffee to get coffee, we actually used a spinning technique. It actually made really good coffee because it was a consistent extraction of the flavors and the oils and things out of a coffee bean. The problem was it was super dangerous and the thing used to fly apart. So we didn't bring that to market. So there were all these things that we've done that, what you don't see at a consumer, but each one of those things taught us something and allowed us to do products that are better in the future. So that's it. I could keep going, but I think for the purpose of this conversation that we've had, and even though I've been doing a lot of talking, hopefully it gives you the appetite and the confidence to go out into the world and whatever you decide to do, whether it's run your own business or work for a business or eventually carve your own way forward in the world, and it's changing rapidly. It allows you to go out there and be much bolder and stronger. Wakatipu High School gives you some incredible advantages in the changing world. So, embrace it. Any questions?
I was just wondering if there were any particular moments that you thought were more challenging than the rest within your career?
Yeah, there were lots. One that comes to mind was culturally. So, for me to go from Australia to America really pushed me from a cultural point of view. America is a lot bigger, but it's also quite different. We speak the same language, but the ways of operating in America was different. The biggest jump was for me when I went from America to Singapore, and had a big focus around Asia, because there was the language, there was the traditions, there was the countries, and it was the way that people lived. So to me, I've been lucky enough to go around the world and experience these things and live in them. So it's not talking about going on a holiday, and being in people's homes and seeing the way they live. It's a huge challenge. And what it does is it allows you to, for me anyway, I think, have a much broader view of humanity, and all of these impacts and all of these things that are going around the world. I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges. The second challenge was around bias. So people who thought they knew the best, people who had experienced things and thought that was the only way. So in any organization, you need the balance, I think, of what's happened in the past and the knowledge balanced out by young brains and young thinking and challenging the status quo. And if you do that well, you actually accelerate businesses and accelerate your own personal lives forward a lot quicker. So and gender bias, between female male, in organisations to have both, I think is helpful and useful. And some of the organisations and some of the businesses I've been in are biased one way or the other. So to actually unwind some of those pieces is actually quite hard and challenging. So all of those things I think are have been tough. So I don't get to the end of the day and think, wow, that was an easy day. Throughout any day, you have all these challenges.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Any other questions?
If you went to university, what did you study?
Okay, so I didn't go to university. What I did do is I went to a technical college, Polytech. But what I did is when I left school, I went to work for Television New Zealand. And part of their program was to do a technical like a degree really, and that would lead on to an engineering degree. But after 5 years, so the way that you work in TV New Zealand and you do these block courses, and then they would break you out, and then you go on to do an engineering degree. And that was going to take 7 years. After 5 years of being at TV New Zealand and doing a whole lot of stuff, I couldn't hold myself back from doing my OE. And so then I just got my one-way ticket to Vancouver and just broke out and then experienced 3 years doing a sort of round the world trip by myself and obviously with friends as I met along the way. So I think what that did was it balanced me out between a technical type of degree and having a academic foundation and a core training professional, but it balanced out around people. And that's where I ended up, in leadership roles. So I think the balance between all of those things are really important. So that, sort of, I think the thing that's really interesting to me is the world is changing so fast that history can teach you some things and imparting knowledge can teach you others, but effectively it comes down to the person to take that and carve your own way forward.
Mike,
But if I
can I ask a corollary to that? You in your position, kind of at the upper levels of kind of leadership in the companies, you, as you said, you look for people with kind of new thoughts and new ideas. Clearly, you're a critical thinker. If you were to go to university today, is there a particular kind of area that you think you'd zero in on or study?
Yeah, so I like the idea of business innovation. I think business innovation is a good thing to do for me personally, and understanding a level of finance, because generally businesses need to make a profit to grow and be sustainable. And that's unfortunately, a lot of the way of the world. So I would think about making sure you've got a strong analytical part of the course and financial, bringing in innovation, whether that's business innovation or whatever you choose, if you like medical innovation or anything around that. So there's that part of innovation. And then there's that other piece around understanding people. Super important to understand how to get the best out of people and yourself. So if there's a course around some of those three fundamentals, but it always comes back to your passion. If I really am excited about something, I generally do better at it. If I don't want to do it or don't like it, then I'm terrible at it.
Mike, so you said at the beginning that you valued collaboration with what you've done. How has that impacted the actions that you've taken at Dyson and further in other careers that you've had in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what collaboration I think has done for me is early on I was I felt like I was quite a strong force on driving my beliefs forward. And what I learned over time is my beliefs were not always right. And so by truly collaborating and thinking and giving yourself time before acting, I think generates a much better result. And not deliberately, what I'm doing now is I'm deliberately not reacting quickly on what my intuitive nature tells me what to do or say. I actually give myself a break and then I respond. Now, it's something that I'm forcing myself to do even more today. So let's say you get an email and you think you know the answer and you just want to respond to it. And I'm not talking about basic stuff. I'm talking about more, strategy and planning. I will just give myself a little bit more time before responding and perhaps talk to others about it. And so what you can do is you can, a technique between individually talking to people and group discussions, if you can learn how to lead those and guide those to get outputs that you want, then that's really important. So I think that collaborative nature is to be able to balance collaboratively, but then make a decision and move forward. The other thing, when you are working collaboratively, be very clear about the situation. So are we going to discuss it and I will make the decision? Are we going to discuss it and you make the decision? Are we going to discuss it and we will all make the decision? Or we're going to discuss it and we just won't make any decision? So, but when you clarify the situation that you're working in and the output of it, then people aren't confused when perhaps you make their final decision when they thought, hey, we're collaborating and we will all make the decision. Well, sometimes that just doesn't work. We'll talk about it, I'll take your inputs, but ultimately I'll make the decision. Or, hey, look, I want to put my opinion in and I want to put my thoughts in, but ultimately you make the decision. So when you're very clear about that, it helps with the output.
We've all got to head off to class now, but I think, what you said, Mike, has been quite interesting. You talked about breaking the status quo in marketing and customer service and technology and retail. And you also mentioned that a lot of your colleagues in Dyson have moved on to much bigger places in the business sector. And I think that idea, that mindset of daring to do different, I think it's something that a lot of us can take away as students, as we're all heading off into the marketplace in a couple of years. So on behalf of everyone here, I really wanted to thank you for taking your time to come and talk to us. We all really appreciate it. So
Thank
you. Brilliant. All right, well done. Thank you, everyone, and I'll go and have my breakfast now.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.